Well, today we are talking about boundaries that empower growth. And I'm really excited about it because when I hear that, and maybe when you hear that, those two things might not seem to go together. Boundaries and growth, boundaries being restrictive, growth inherently not being restrictive. So, how do they go together? And the reason I think they go really well together is because when we know what healthy boundaries really are, and when we put them in place, growth will occur both in relation to health and effectiveness in our lives and in others' lives. So maybe you're coming to this conversation. Usually we all fall into one of two camps around this conversation. Maybe there's some of us here in the I don't need boundaries camp. Everything's all good. Life's great. Got all the resources you need. Maybe you love your job, you love your family, your people, whatever. Everything's good. Why do I need boundaries? That's just something that, people that have a hard time, or people that, are in a healthy environment. That's the people that need boundaries. I don't need boundaries. Everything's great. My church is perfect. My job's perfect, whatever it is. And if you fall there, great. I'm glad everything is going good for you. But some of us, we also fall into the boundaries sound great camp, but how am I going to do that? You know, we think about boundaries and we think, I don't want to be adversarial or confrontational. I don't know what healthy expectations are for setting boundaries. I don't feel empowered to set them. Maybe even we don't have the resources or the ability to continually implement them. We tried once, it was going good, but and this last one, happened. People override our boundaries. It seems like maybe as soon as you set one, what happened? I thought I said I have this boundary. There it goes. And that's just a reality of life. And but before I jump further into exploring this topic, I do just want to acknowledge the reality that when you are on this journey of exploring healthy boundaries, if you are in a position of less power, or if you're in an environment of unhealth, it can be harder to implement boundaries, to grow in healthy boundaries. You have a bigger journey ahead of you there. So I just want to acknowledge that reality is real, it's valid, it's a real feeling. But I would also say we all have a next step towards exploring healthy boundaries, whatever that is. So to get into this, I would love to just put out a definition of boundaries that we can all agree on, a working definition of healthy boundaries. Because boundaries, again, it could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. Maybe, again, you think of it, it's immediately confrontation. Maybe you think of it, you're like, oh, yeah, that's a healthy, normal thing. And anywhere in between, right? So the working definition we're going to use today is healthy boundaries are the communications and the action needed to reach our goals. And you might hear that, and that might make you think of another word. You're like, hey, that kind of sounds a lot like habits. And I would say that healthy boundaries and habits have a lot in common. They're not that far apart at all. And when we start thinking about them that way, it can become more of a natural part of our lives and others' lives. So jumping in though, you'll notice on the left here, a very happy young man working at Sherwin-Williams. And that is me looking extra Amish, I guess. I used to work at Sherwin-Williams before I got into ministry and digital communications and creativity and all that stuff. Or it'd be more accurate to say I got into it at the same time, because went to college 4 years for youth and family ministry, some theology stuff, and I don't know if you know this, but it doesn't pay a lot of money. So in fact, my first couple jobs were free. So, besides like all the catered food that mega churches get. So that was dope. Really good free chicken shawarma in Michigan. Yeah, I just want to share a little bit about my journey with healthy boundaries, because I started when I started kind of, getting out of college into ministry, doing stuff. I was working full time at Sherwin-Williams selling paint, so 38 to 45 hours a week. And then I also, along with Shelby, my wife, worked full time at a mega church in the area. And we also lived an hour away from both of those things. So just doing the math there a little bit, 2 full-time jobs, hour away from both. Time-wise, that's a lot, right? You might think, you might hear me saying like, wow, how did you even function? But honestly, like Shelby and I look back on it, we're like, like there's unhealthy things just like anywhere else. But it was a good time. Like things were going well. So even though I didn't really have a lot of boundaries, things are mostly good. Didn't feel burnt out. I definitely felt tired sometimes. I would say there's, a lot of ups and downs. But I didn't feel like I had a lack of boundaries. I was probably in that camp of why do I need boundaries? Things are fine. Why do I need boundaries? I'm getting to work full time for free at a mega church as a youth pastor. Like, why do I need boundaries? I need to serve. So maybe some of us are there today. But moving out of that, on the way to this picture on the right, my wife got a job down at a church in Pennsylvania in youth ministry. So we moved down there, and I stopped volunteering at my place because we're moving down there, and I worked full time at Sherwin, assistant manager. Yeah, and I opened the most credit accounts in the district, so no big deal. But moving down there, kind of my journey with healthy boundaries became, I actually had way better boundaries, not working 2 jobs automatically, time-wise, that makes sense. But I clocked in, I went to work, I sold paint, and barring the cranky contractor like sticking around in my head, because there's a whole world of paint you don't even know about, and you probably don't want to know about, so that's fine. Besides that, sticking around maybe mentally, like usually I was good. I clocked in, I clocked out, I had great boundaries, everything was great. I got to hang out with my wife whenever I wanted. I had time to myself. Was able to work on like hobbies like photography and other things, and volunteering at the church where Shelby was working. But I would say a little bit unfulfilled, a little bit low on the purpose side of things, because I don't, this might sound like a surprise to you, but I did not grow up dreaming of selling paint for my life. And I see in the chat, Jason said that Sherwin-Williams is where you go for the best, and that's accurate. It is the best. If you use Behr paint, don't talk to me anymore. But I mean, you can, it's just all your paint will fall off your walls. But anyways, yeah. I was working just full-time, had great boundaries, and then I finally got a job at that church as director of digital communications. It was awesome. This was a dream. Both my wife and I were being paid full-time to work at a church, and that was our goal ever since being married. So after many years, it had happened, and we were super excited about it. But as far as my journey with healthy boundaries go, this is where, maybe I was going up on the boundaries, but low on the purpose. Went really high in the purpose, but very low on the boundaries, because man, I was excited to be pursuing my purpose. I was very excited when they offered me overseeing their online location, planting that and growing it, and both, helping produce and be the online pastor for it, and not realizing that that is 2 full-time jobs and more. I started to see a lot of texts late at night outside of working hours, and expectations going all over the place. A lot of other things going on. I'm going to pause right here because I started to see a lot of red flags in my life as far as boundaries go. And I just want to point out these red flags because maybe this is where you're at right now, or you're one of those people that said, I don't need boundaries, but maybe one of these things are happening in your life, or the next time it comes up. This is just, again, it could be a red flag. It could be something you start to feel a little bit. Just a good reminder to check in with yourself. Be empathetic with yourself. What's going on here? So these are some red flags. That's time to do a boundary check. You feel like you can't say no. That one seems pretty obvious, right? If you have a boundary that's saying no, but you can't say no, you can't have boundaries. These next 2 have a bit to do with yourself. So maybe you're always tired or you don't get good sleep. You know, if you're stressed out about all things because of a lack of boundaries, you're not going to be getting a lot of sleep, or it might not be that great quality of sleep. Or maybe you're quick to anger. Maybe you're quick to anger because you don't get the sleep. I know I get quick to anger if I don't have food, but which that goes into, you know, skipping down one, you don't have time to work on your physical, mental, and emotional health. If you don't have time to prepare nutritional meals for yourself, if you don't have time to eat lunch, that's probably a red flag. You need to have the boundary of, I have a lunchtime that includes me consuming food. Couple other ones, your most important relationships are under constant stress. Why am I always fighting with my wife? Why am I always fighting maybe a close friend or family member? It's not always this way. What's going on? Your spirituality may be becoming a little stale or burden. You know, you were there on Sundays, you're serving, and you're like, why am I here? This is a waste of my time. Your faith isn't meant to be like that. It does happen, like things happen, and you know, anything can get stale or feel like a burden, and you know, you need to revisit that and liven it up. But that could be a sign. It's time to look at your boundaries. And then your outlook on life isn't trending upwards. If you feel like there's nothing ahead of you, I would say that is like, these are all really strong indicators, but that's a very strong indicator. Like, because you might feel like you're stuck where you're at. And again, if we're talking about boundaries being the communications and actions to get where you're going, to reach your goals, it's probably time to check them out. So I had to end up checking them out. I was forced to check them out after a rough transition away from where I was at. You know, everything didn't burn any bridges, left well, but it was just a very unhealthy environment for me and my wife there. So, but on my journey of healthy boundaries, leaving that environment, I found RSpeak Creative. I was just looking for a job. I had some graphic design skills, and I started as a part-time graphic designer. Started there, became an art director. After a while, worked on some really cool projects like Resolution Movement. Love Ben, those guys, what we get to do there. And then eventually started to be able to lead some teams, and now I oversee our department that serves clients in an ongoing manner. So between all of that, from being part-time contract to spending all my time with ArtSpeak, I would say it's probably the most healthy, healing environment that I've ever been a part of. I say it all the time in meetings. It's always part of my gratitudes. It was a really healing environment after a hurtful experience where I thought maybe I wouldn't be doing combining creativity in the church ever again. So I'm happy for that. And I think a lot of people that are part of our team would say that. But at the same time, I've still had to set boundaries while being here. Even though it's the healthiest, most effective place I've ever been a part of, I still need to set boundaries. I've had some red flags that come up personally or professionally, where it's like, hey, I need to check on my boundaries. And that's because no matter where you're at on this journey, it's a part of life, and it's something you always have to be inspecting. So I want to put that out there because, again, boundaries aren't this bad thing that are, you know, you only do in the worst circumstances. It's something to always be inspecting. When I find myself more irritable than normal, or like this is one I did last night. I was working on this presentation on boundaries past my normal time I would work, and Shelby came to ask me for dinner, and that could be a trigger for me to be upset. But I was like, no, I should probably pause my presentation on boundaries to take this boundary and have dinner. Need to eat, need to spend time with people I care about. So even that, like, that's a boundary check, right? It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing to think about. So through all that, you can kind of see what my journey was looking at this chart here. Going to the right is purpose, going up is boundaries. Where I started with I'll just take you through it real quick. No boundaries, no purpose, bottom left. Top left, I went up to high boundaries, low purpose. And then down to the bottom right, low purpose, or low boundaries, high purpose. Then at the top, high boundaries, high purpose. This is what I would label each of those. And I am going to go through this a little bit quick. You can always go back a little bit in the recording because there's some more stuff I'd rather spend more time on. But that first part, man, I was thriving or diving. I was just kind of going up or down. Didn't really matter. I had no dial on what boundaries were. I was, just selling paint, or I was working at Sherwin and at a church full time, just going after it. It was fine, but nothing was really dialed in on purpose. Nothing was really purposeful. So I go up to safe and unfulfilled. I was working at Sherwin-Williams selling paint, clocked in, clocked out, great boundaries, not a lot of purpose. And so I kept wanting to kind of go after my purpose, go after where I felt God was calling me. So I went down to that bottom right corner, driven and prone to injury. And it was great going after what I felt like God was calling me towards. It was great pursuing the opportunities that were put in front of me. But I got hurt. It hurt. And it hurt others that I care about too. And so even though I'm thankful for all the experience I gained, and I wouldn't be able to serve in the way that I do now if I didn't have those experiences, being more mindful of boundaries, being more aware of the expertise of what I was trying to do even took so that I could articulate boundaries in a rational way would have been nice. Maybe hurt a little less. But on all that journey, I finally ended up at this healthy and effective place. And I think all of us, and I'd love it if you put in the chat where you might find yourself today on that journey. Or if you're watching this replay, put it in the comments, because we'd love to have conversations around helping each other to find our next step towards healthy boundaries. Yeah, that was kind of my journey. I think we all go through this journey anytime we try to set boundaries too at every new place we're at. That was like where I was at different vocational placements, but even just staying at one place, I think you might go through this a lot. Anytime you're in a new position, maybe working on a new project, you're working with new people, you might have to go through this journey. But real quick, I want to hit on what healthy boundaries are and are not. And in a second here, I'm going to give a couple chances to respond. So I'd love it if you put that in the Slack channel, our Speak University chat, or again, comment on this if you're rewatching. So healthy boundaries, I want to talk about what they are and are not. We talked a bit about the working definition, but here's some characteristics. I think healthy boundaries are essential steps you take to get what you want, also known as your goals, and the communications and actions to get what you want, to reach your goals. Healthy boundaries are your responsibility to communicate and hold to. People can't do that for you. You have to do it. And healthy boundaries are able to thoughtfully be changed as desired and needed. Just because you set a boundary doesn't mean it can't ever change, but you're responsible for managing it. So someone, ideally someone can't make you change that boundary. And if that happens, then that's another conversation, right? But in the chat, I would love to see what characteristics are of healthy boundaries. If you were thinking about healthy boundaries and you had to fill in that blank, healthy boundaries are, what would you say? I see you saying no. That can be a part of it. Healthy boundaries are clear. Yep, for sure. They're between safe but unfulfilled, or healthy and effective to some level. Yeah. They do take work. Yes. Healthy boundaries do take work for sure. Yeah. Acknowledging your own needs, and yeah, I'll move on with those two, because acknowledging your own needs and confident in your priorities, again, you do have to know what you want. We'll get into that in a second to be able to set healthy boundaries. And yeah, they are scary sometimes. Here's some things that I think they aren't. And if you want, go ahead and start putting in the chat some things that you don't think healthy boundaries are. So if you had to fill in that blank, healthy boundaries are not. Go ahead and put that in there. To me, healthy boundaries aren't a weapon or tool to fight people with. And I wanted to put that in there because I think a lot of us, I'm an Enneagram 9. If you know what that means, great. Really quick, that just, nines don't like confrontation. They're slow to wake up to what they want. there could be like 10 different people talking to like your average 9 or maybe an unhealthy 9. If you're thinking about the Enneagram, and they might all have different opinions and they all think the 9 agrees with them. So that's just a little summary there. But whether you're like myself or just someone that, thinks about boundaries as they're really confrontational, those first two, they're not a weapon or tool to fight people with. They're not inherently confrontational. This isn't something to tear people down with. This is something to help you reach your goals. And like, that is not a bad thing. It is a healthy thing. So healthy boundaries aren't inherently confrontational, and they're not something that makes you responsible for how others respond. I know that might be worded a little awkwardly, but like, they're not something, if you set a boundary, you're not responsible for how somebody responds. They're responsible for how they respond. Now, we can be mindful, we can be empathetic, and we need to do that. But you can't be responsible for the way that someone responds with that. Looking at these, healthy boundaries aren't an excuse not to be a team player. Yep, for sure. Again, being empathetic, thoughtful of others. Healthy boundaries are not hard and fast rules, for sure. Like, again, you are responsible for your boundaries. So maybe it's a really important boundary, you need to keep it. It's not going to be too flexible, but there's some other ones where it's like, yeah, I can be flexible on that, because I know it'll help us be effective. And there's other things you're thinking of. They're not an excuse. They aren't impenetrable, manipulative, or directed at others, maybe like a specific person. Not a scapegoat. They aren't a wall, they're a fence with a gate. So yeah, I love that metaphor, love that imagery. I love that we're all kind of thinking about the same thing here. So yeah, feel free to keep throwing them in there. I'm going to move on because I want to have a couple minutes for discussion. I want to give you quick this formula for boundary setting. So I think boundary setting can be done by doing this. Asking what do I want plus telling others what you need is what boundary setting is. And again, that can be with words or actions. So how do you know the right boundaries to set? Jason Bowman here talks about pretty frequently 3 questions that have changed and still change me. Who is Jesus? What do I want? What it looked like to thrive in life? These are all healthy questions because it makes you think about what you really want. And that could be a lot of things, right? What are your goals, your purpose, your priorities? Maybe you want your family. I want my family to like me. And like, that might sound obvious, but like, there's a lot of people, if you think about, like, I mean, maybe you've come from a really healthy family, or you know a lot of healthy people. I know a lot of people, their families don't like them. And they would think that the people in their family have no reason not to like them. Well, part of that can be boundaries with your work, boundaries on what you will or won't do, boundaries that you have as a family. So I want my family to like me. I want to prioritize my physical and mental health. And when, again, a lot of this has to do with priorities, I'll sacrifice 5 minutes of something I don't care about if it means I'm able to fully do something that'll improve my physical or mental health. Like, no one's gonna hate you for that. And you can read through the rest of that list, but it's a lot about knowing yourself and knowing what you want and knowing what you need, so that way you can communicate it with your words and your actions. And this is why I think boundaries and growth go together. When we ask for what we need based off of what we want, and as others do the same, we're all prompted to build systems, habits, and communication that support health, and support effectiveness in pursuit of our goals. So if you're overwhelmed at work, you're overwhelmed at your church, you're overwhelmed, maybe you need more time to yourself, you're an introvert like myself, no one's going to give that to you if you don't ask for it. Like, again, you're responsible for your boundaries and your needs, just like other people are responsible for their responses and their needs and communicating that. We can't control each other. We can only talk about what we need and then be empathetic towards others, emulating the way of Jesus. So when you do that, like, for example, if you do that at work, hey, I don't have time to do that. And normally I won't have time to do that in that time frame. But if that needs to be done in that time frame, someone can start having a conversation about, okay, what workflow do we need to change, or what resource do we need, or what hire do we need to make to meet that need, so that way our team can be healthy. I know that's how we do things at ArtSpeak. That's one of the reasons I love it. If you're at an unhealthier place, that might uncover some other conversations that are harder, but it might move you again towards health. So these are some examples, kind of what I was just talking about. You can see it on the screen. You can pause it on the replay if you want. I'll throw out this deck later after too. So just want to leave us with this quote, and then we can probably do one question. When you go to tell people what you want, you might face that confrontation. This is an Instagram follow I very recently made. I think Shelby follows her, Dr. Allison Cook. She's like a faith-based psychologist. There's a lot of similar things in one of the clients we work with, Resolution Movement. But she said, sometimes living at peace with other people means living at peace with disappointing them. And that really resonates with me, because I hate disappointing other people. Excuse me. But if you're setting these boundaries, maybe they're not desired, but they're valued and respected, that you can live with, right? Like if you're disappointing someone, but they still value and respect your boundaries, that's not that bad. That can still happen. Not everyone's going to be as excited as you are about your boundaries, and that's okay. But as long as they respect you, they care about you, and I love being at RSpeak where boundaries are encouraged and empowered. That helps them be a lot healthier. But if your boundaries aren't desired, valued, or respected, again, you're responsible for your own boundaries. I wish we had some more time, and this might be what a question is about, so we'll take a question here. But just when you put that boundary out there, if it's hard to put that in there, get some people around you who are going to help you think about, is your boundary realistic? Is it valuable? Is it going to lead you towards health? And if it is, then there might be other things you need to change so that you can live that healthy life. One person on video, go for a question, or if you want to put it in the chat.
Andrew, I know you've served in both capacities where, of course, you are, part of a team, but you've also led teams. How does boundaries look different as a leader than as a follower?
Well, if you know me, I like to think about things, so I could think about that and give a very thoughtful answer. But my initial answer would probably be, I think it's pretty similar. It's just one is usually when you're, maybe in the follower role, or there's a leader above you, usually you're giving them the boundary because they might be asking you a lot of you, or they need to know what they can ask of you. They need to know the resources that they have to execute a project. Where, if it's someone that maybe you're leading, then you have to kind of reverse the empathy there. Like, you need to be proactively thinking about boundaries they need to be healthy, I think, as well as respecting and affirming the boundaries they might be communicating to you. If you don't make it as easy as possible for them to communicate boundaries to you, then either they're not going to communicate them and get burnt out, or they will communicate them by leaving, or other unhealthy parts of their life, which I don't want to ever see. So if we're pursuing healthy boundaries, and when we're leading people, ideally we're proactively helping them set boundaries and asking what they need and resourcing them, which is one of the things I love about RSpeak.
Really good, Andrew. Thank you.
This was fantastic, Andrew. One of my favorite RSpeak universities ever. Great topic, so essential, so necessary, and such a great presentation. Yeah, do you got a question for us to chew on in the Slack channel?
Yeah, here's the two questions that I'd love for you to keep talking about in the Slack channel or in a comment on this replay. Either, what bottlenecks are you currently facing when you try to set boundaries? Because we'd love to help, either just affirm you as you explore those, or brainstorm ways to help. So what bottlenecks are you currently facing when you try to set boundaries? And then what's been maybe a success story for you? What's been a successful boundary or habit for you that's helped you be healthier Maybe it's a time you set a boundary and it was really well received. Maybe it's the time you tried to set a boundary and it was hard, but the journey took you to an in-place healthy boundary and things are great now. Just what's a success story around boundaries that you've experienced?